different events related examples are there. So now today we are going to discuss one more very important concept, that is how do we configure custom events. We need to know about custom events. So we learned about the events provided by, what are the events provided by JavaScript and used by Angular. Those are all predefined events. Then what are custom events? Custom events means you can create events. Now the question is why we need to create events. What is the necessity of events? Generally, custom events are required for custom components. That means if you create your own component, that component must have its own events also. So that means usually, for example, what we can do is, suppose in a project, yeah. So suppose in a project, we are dealing with some design. That means we are creating a design. We have an application, and in this we are displaying a table. This table may contain any kind of data. It may be products, it may be employees, it may be students. So that means it's like a grid control. Now, if you are displaying records inside this table, suppose there are 100 records. Now I want pagination. For every page, I can display 5, 10 records like that. But this table is an ordinary HTML table. Those tables don't have any paginations or anything. Now what we can do is, we can design a separate component. So this component is pagination component. This pagination component contains some pagination related functionalities. Pagination functionalities like a previous page, like next page, or specific page numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, like this. It can have. Now this component that you designed, this pagination component that you designed, we need to use this in any table that we want. We can use it in any table. And we attach this to this table. Now, when I click on that page numbers, then it should send information to this table, which is a different component. And that table component have to respond to this. That means this pagination component will have some events. Events like next click. So events like previous click. So that means on next click, previous click. So they have to change the previous page and next page in that table. That means you designed a component. That component will have its own events, which this table will use here. That means now what this table will do, it will say that on next click, I will change the 10 records, 10 plus like that, 10 plus plus like that. So such options we will define here. That means why we need custom events. Custom events are not used simply like that. Generally, custom events are used when we are designing custom components. When we create our own component, that component should have its own events so that it can respond to those events, handle the functionality by the basis of those events. So why we need custom events? Custom events are nothing but custom events are defined by developers, by developer. Custom events are defined by developer. So custom events are used for custom components. Custom components, that means our own components. Custom events are used for custom components. That is the important. So who is this? jQuery data table already given these events, but this is not jQuery na. Shailendra Pandit, you are not learning jQuery. Eh? So here we need Angular native related logic, not your jQuery logic. Understood? So we don't use any jQuery here. If you use jQuery, why you came to Angular? Design your application in jQuery only. Time waste, na? So the point here is why we are using Angular. Why we are using Angular? To overcome the issues with jQuery. Again, talking about jQuery components in Angular is completely baseless, right? It is completely rubbish. Why? Because it's silly, right? You came to Angular to overcome the problems of jQuery and JavaScript. Again, you say that I will use jQuery grid here. That is like silly thing. It's like joke. We don't use any jQuery here, right? We want all native to Angular. So again, you are using jQuery. Why you came to Angular? Continue your jQuery design only, right? So we, to overcome the issues, we are not using any jQuery. That's the reason in our examples also, if you know already JavaScript, we have used JavaScript related logic here, but not JavaScript. We are using TypeScript. And we are using Bootstrap here. In Bootstrap, I never used any jQuery functionality up to now. No. In Bootstrap, I used only icons. I used only CSS. Bootstrap have jQuery alerts, models, navigation bars, because using them is completely senseless. Why? Because we don't want again the jQuery to come in. So we will use Angular native. That's what I told you. We will use Angular native components called material components, Angular material. You will see that. So don't talk about any jQuery here, and don't prefer to use them anymore here, right? So technically, custom events are used to define custom components. And what important here is custom components custom components are embedded into existing component to handle specific functionality. Hence they require custom events. Hence they require custom events. Custom components are embedded into existing component to handle specific functionality. That is the reason those custom components require some custom events. We will see how to use them and how do we work with them. All right. Yeah. So first thing, to understand this custom events, first we need to know how a component is used in another component, how we can transport the data from one component to another. Already how to use a component in another component we learned. We discussed about how to use a component in another component. In Netflix example I showed you header component, main component, index component. So we designed and we know how to use a component in another component. So to understand custom events, first you need to know how to access and use a component in another component. This we already discussed. We already know about it. Second, you need to know how to transport data from parent component to child. This is first step. How to transport data from parent component to child component. This is the first thing. That means now in this example, who is the parent component? The parent component is this table, right? Into that you are using which component? Pagination. That means this is component is what? Child. Now what should child component know about parent? We need to send some data from parent to child. What data we have to send? Like how many records table is having? How many records table is having? If you send that information, then only it can use page numbers. How many page numbers it needs? That means pagination components need to know how many records the table is having. According to that, it can give how many page numbers you need. Right? That means we need to send information from parent component to child. How data is sent from parent to child? Directly it is not accessible. How we can send? Let's see. We will see that example now. For that, I will design a simple component hierarchy for you. First, syntax example we will see. Then we will implement a real world example. First, a syntax example we will see. So here I am changing into that folder. Okay. Now I am generating a component here. Let's generate two components here. So one component is one component ng generate component parent. I am generating a parent component. Next, we will generate another child component. Ng generate child. So we have two components the parent and child. Okay. So here we will go to the parent component and keep it in the startup. In app module, I will keep the parent component in the startup. Parent component. In index, let's keep the parent in the startup. We have parent in the startup. Okay. Now let's go and see. So parent component is working fine. So parent is working. Now let's design a screen here. So we will go to the parent component HTML. In the parent component HTML, we will keep a div class. So as container fluid, some BG, some dark. Okay, text white. And here I will add a heading saying that parent component. And here I will put some padding, some 3. And I will keep some style height as some height as 300 pixel. This is the parent component we have. So the parent component is there. Okay. Now let's go and create a child component. In the child component, just keep a div and same container fluid, padding 3 or 2. Yeah. And margin 2 or 3. Yeah. And BG, suppose some danger. Okay. Now text white. So, and here I will put a heading. This is child component. Okay. That is separately designed. Child component is separately designed. I want the child component inside parent. Then how to access a component inside another components? It's very simple. Already we done. Here just we have to use app child. We have to just use its selector. That means now you can see child component is there. We need to just use its selector. Now in the child component, I will keep the style height as some 200 pixel. The child component is fine like this. Now I want the parent component to send some information to child. That means in parent component here, let's go to its TS file. This is parent component TS. In this parent component, we have a property called message. This message property is a string type and it is having some message. So hello from parent. This is the message. Now this is present in parent component. This is the message of parent component. Then I will go to the parent component HTML. This is the area of child. In child component, I want to display the message. You can't directly write like this. You can't directly write like this. Because if you want to show anything inside child component, you have to send into it. You are trying like a container here. So, but this component is not here. It is coming from some other location. And you try to write something here, you can see it's not child. So parent component have to send information to child. Then first point is child component must have a property that can accept value from parent. This child component must have a property which can accept value from parent. Then I will go to child component TS file. In TS file, I will create a property called MSG. It is a string type and it is initially empty. It is initially empty. Or I will just keep here temporarily. It is expecting message from parent. It is expecting message from parent. What is the property name? MSG. So child component have a property called MSG. Okay. This message I want to display in the child component HTML. Below this heading, I want to display that message. That means whatever properties are defined in a component, they are used in the same component. Whatever properties are defined in a component, they are used in the same component. So we are defining that here itself. So it is saying that expecting message from parent. Expecting message from parent. Okay. Now here what we do is this is message MSG is a property of which component? It is a property of child component. So let's go to the parent component. Here we are using child component. Child component have a property. How we access properties of any component? Properties are accessed with a square brace. Properties are accessed with a square brace. Which property this component is having? MSG. So MSG. And you can see this MSG, it is not available actually. See, MSG is a property which is expecting some string. But you see here, it shows a message saying that Angular component so cannot bind to MSG because it is not a known property of app child. It is not a known property of app child, but it is a property of app child we created. It is saying that it is not a known property of app child. That is also reasonable because you already learned that you declare any class and you want to access that class in another module, then directly you can access a class. Can you access a class of a module in another class? You cannot. In order to access, you have to mark it as export. No? That means the properties, yes, the properties that you defined in a component are not accessible in another component. They are accessible only in that component. So if you want this MSG component to be accessed outside and not only accessed outside, it should accept value from outside. It should accept value from outside and use that value. Then you have to mark it with a decorator called input. We have to mark it with a decorator called input. Input allows this property to be used outside. Then you should say export. Then why you are saying input? Because this is a property not to send data. This is a property to access data. That means from other components, it should allow to send data. Other components should send data into it. Then it should able to accept the data and use it. So this property is not meant for emitting value. This property is meant for accepting value. That means what is the intention of MSG? To collect value coming from parent. If it is mentioned for taking a value, it is designed for taking a value, then it should be marked as input. If it is designed for sending value, then you should mark it as output. Output. We have input and output. So input is a member of Angular core. Automatically it added it. If it is not adding, you have to manually add it. Automatically adding because our Visual Studio have that intelligence. You write input, automatically it will add. Otherwise, you have to manually add it. So input is a directive. Input is a directive. Till now, you have seen directives like @component, @module. That is the ng module. That is the component given for modules. So this is directive. Input indicates that the property can access value from other components. So let's save this now. When I save this, now you can see here, I saved that and refresh here. You see it is saying undefined. That means value is not coming. Okay, fine. We will send value. So let's go to parent component. It cannot be empty. It should send some value. So I will send some value. Is it mandatory to send value? Yes, because you created a property here which is not optional. How to make it optional? You can keep it with question mark. If you make it optional, then it's okay. Even you don't mention it, it doesn't matter. If it is mandatory, then you have to mention the value into this. So let's go to parent. Here, parent component is having a message which is having hello from parent. This message we will send here. Understood? This message is a property of parent, which is sending value into child. Child is collecting that and displaying it. Let's see, child is collecting and displaying. That means in the child component, you have the message hello from parent. You can directly do that, or you can do it on button click or something. Right? I just written on load. You can do it on button click. For example, suppose in the parent component, let's see, in the parent component, I put a button. So class as BTN and BTN danger, something like send. So then you see is there is a button called send. When I click on this send button, it should send a message to child. That's your wish. You can write anything, right? As of now, you see this message is empty. Nothing is there configured into it. Just what you have to do is in the parent component, you can write a option. So here we can write as send click. So on send click, what we can do is we can update that message, this dot message. So is equal to, so message updated from parent, something like that. Message updated from parent. This send click should fire up when user clicks on this send button. That means we have to use click and we need to configure send click. That should fire up. That means when I click on this send button, it should update the message from parent. We are sending, remember, to both are different components. We are sending data from parent component to child. This is very easy. You may be thinking like this is very complicated, but this is the easiest part in our concept currently, because it's very simple. If you want to send value, there must be a property to collect value, and that property must be marked as input. That's it. That means if a component have to accept value from parent, simple, it should have a property marked with input. That's it. So if it is having a property marked with input, it will collect the value. There can be so many properties. There can be so many properties for a component, not only one property, right? There can be so many properties here. So many properties means, here the point is, the parent component, the child component, you can have more than one property. We can have more than one property. You can have more than one property. And now use your brain. Don't be so silly, because somebody is asking here, who is it? Suresh. In case of sending object, don't be so silly now. Why? Because this is string type. It is string. Is it only string? Can we send any type of data? Any type of data you can send. It can be an object, it can be a number, it can be an array, anything you can send. Right now, just like school people, you should not ask these questions anymore, right? Like, can I send number? Can I send object? That becomes so silly, right? So the point is, you can send any kind of data. If I said that you can send data, that means data can be any type. You can send any kind of data. Only you have to use your common sense of JavaScript, right? How do you property? It should input, marked with input, public. What is it? Suppose obj. So obj, or say, yeah, obj, it should be what type? Any type. And it is initially what? Object, right? In that object, you can define any properties, you can configure any properties, you can restrict any properties. Instead of any type, you can use an contract. Contract means interface. You can design an interface. You can tell that it should be of that particular type. It will accept only those type of values. So here the point is, now it is an object. Are you expecting any specific details in that object? You can mention that also. Or any object, you can configure as any. If you are expecting only specific details, then you can write like name, what type, string type. Like I am expecting price, what type? So price, what type? It's a number type, right? That means now we can display the details. We can display the details. So how to display product? Object details, right? How do we display object details here? Suppose I will put a heading. I say object. And how do we display object details? That means what we have to do, obj dot what? Name. So that means we need to define name. So that name is obj name, price obj price, anything. Now how we can send the data? So to send the data, You can send any type of data into it, right? To send the data, now what we have to do, go to parent component. In the parent component, there must be some object. That object you have to send into this. So it is having a property, another property. What is it? Obj. Obj is expecting what? It is expecting an object. Object with what? Name as property. I entered some name. It is expecting price. Price. I entered some price. Now it will get that and display. Like school people, you should not ask these anymore. Like, how do I send number? How do I send object? How do I send array? At this level, you should be intelligent enough, little bit, to know that object is sent like this, number is sent like this. You are learning Angular, man, right? Angular. That means it's a very big name in current software industry, right? Now you cannot ask like JavaScript school people how to send number, how to send objects and all, because these are very general things now. If I showed one type, you know how to handle other type. Everything I don't need to show. You must able to deal with that right now. So anyhow, I hope now you got a clarity, right? You can send any type of data from one component to another. Only the point is there must be a property which should able to handle that data. Any type of data, any type of data, there must be a property ready to handle that. So for that, what are the basic rules we discussed? How to transport data from parent to component. So what is the answer for that? Answer for this, by using by using input properties. Understood? By using input properties. So the steps I will give you, the steps we will see that. Step 1, first step is first step is you must define you must define a property, a property in child component. You must define a property in child component marked with marked with at the net input directive, marked with at the net input directive. So we have to first import. I hope you, Suresh, who is this Suresh Kota, you have some patience to wait until topic is discussed, or it is very urgent that you want immediately the point. Huh? You wait until the topic is finished. You will get answer to everything. Don't get over excited and waste time. Okay. You wait until the topic is finished, and after topic is finished, you talk any doubts. Okay. Uh, don't know, these people are very excited. They want all other things other than what we are discussing, right? Keep patience, man, because you are learning a concept which contains so many things involved in it. In the first point itself, you will not get answer for everything. You have to explore all these things step by step. Uh, right. So first important, you must define a property in child marked with input. So syntactically, how we define? We have to import. So input from Angular core, Angular core. Then we have to mark input property name. and type and any value. So that is the option. So initialization is not mandatory. You can give anything. See, this concept contains lot of things, right? Don't get overexcited. Just follow, you will get answer to everything. Because one by one, we have to explore every point. Next, second part, step 2. Now, what we have to do is, after configuring parent component, parent component can send value into child property. Value into child property by using property binding technique. What is a property binding technique? We know already. By using property binding technique, that means we have to define child component. In that we have property name. Property name is equal to whatever value you want to send. That's how we handle it. So this is sending data from parent to child. Now this is first level. There will be so many things here. How we send from one parent to another child to another child. These are all general. Now here the data we need to send from parent to child now. Then we can see nested how it will happen. So first point, okay. We are sending data from child parent to child. Now the second concept. So the third question is how to send how data is sent from child to parent. How data is sent from child to parent. That is the point. So this is actually, if you remembered, you learned JavaScript. JavaScript have a technique called closure, right? Closure technique. So these are all general basic JavaScript things. JavaScript have a closure technique, right? Now closure technique, in closure technique, how a inner function sends data to outer function. That is the basic thing you should know first. The outer function value is directly accessible to inner function, but inner function values are not accessible to outer. If you know the closure technique of JavaScript, you know that the inner function will emit a value by using return. Inner function returns a value. That returned value is called as emitted value. That returned value will be used by, the return value will be used by parent. That means the closure technique we need to handle in this way. Already in JavaScript, you know this. That's not a complex thing here. In JavaScript, you know the general closures very common concept of JavaScript. So the closure technique of JavaScript is you have a function. So this is outer function, and here we have an extend. You have a function, you have inner function. This is having so y20. Now here we are having z is equal to x plus y. It's okay because it can access the parent x in child, but this z cannot be accessed outside. Suppose I defined where result is equal to this z is not accessible here. Then what we do, what is the technique to follow? We want this inner function to return z. That's it. If it can return z, that means now this inner value you can store in that result. You can store in that result. Then outer value can return the result. Outer value can return the result. That means here it can use document dot write. It can use the result. It can use the result. This is a closure technique. That means how it can access data and display. Here, what important is again to display this. So we need to configure the value. We have to call the outer function, right? Outer function is called, then it will execute that functionality and show. So that is general JavaScript concept. That means in a closure technique, we know how the value of inner function can be accessed in outer. It's not directly accessible. It's not directly accessible. So we need to handle using this mechanism. That means now what we have to do is we want this inner component to emit value. That emitted value will be captured by outer component and it will use it. So this is the concept of how you can send data from child to parent. Child to parent. So let's see how data is sent from child to parent. Now we want to send some data from child to parent. In child, there is some data we want to send to parent. I will create in the child component. In the child component, I will put a button. I will adjust the height to 500 pixel. Here adjust the height to 300 pixel. And here I will put a button. So class as BTN and BTN dark. And I will say send to parent. And in the parent, you have send. This is send to child. Child. We have send to child, send to parent. That's so we will use that here in the child component. So send to parent. Okay. Now what should happen is when I click this button, send to parent, a message from this child component should be sent to the parent. That means we need to send data from one component to another, but this is from a lower hierarchy to higher. Lower hierarchy to higher. So from higher hierarchy, you can access in lower easily. That's not a complex thing, but sending from here requires so many points. First important is in the child component, first you need to define a property. Define a property with value that you want to send. You have to define a property with value you want to send. So here I will put a property. So public, suppose message to parent, message to parent. So this message is a string type. Now again, don't come with how to send object. You know how to send now. right? You can send any type of data, right? So it is a string type. And now we are writing here a message. So hello from child, right? This message need to be sent. Okay, when you want to send a message, there are so many conditions here. When to send, this message, we need to send this message, when this button is clicked. Am I right? When button is clicked, that means this button need to have a event. What is it? Click. So here, send to parent, send to parent, 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 click, right? Send to parent, click. That is the function. We will write that function in child component. What is it? Send to parent, click. On send to parent, click, we want to send a message. Which message should be sent? This one. This message should be sent. It cannot easily send. It cannot happen. That means you cannot send, this button related any value to parent. That's not possible at all as of now. That means you cannot send that. That means from here you have to send value to here. Currently events can send value anywhere here only. Any event will be related to this component only. Currently in that component, whatever event triggers, those values can be captured only in that component, not outside. Then what? We need something which can carry the value outside this component. So that means we need somebody who need to carry this value outside this component. Inside this component, it will emit nothing issue. That means this button click, this send to parent button click, will return a value which can be used by this component child, not by parent. That means we need to forcibly send this outside. That means we need more power to send outside. Current events are not enough. These events are not enough to send outside. You need a custom event. You have to create a new event which can kick out of this area. That means the events used for a component are available only for the component. These events cannot send value outside. Then you need a custom event which can send value outside. So what is that custom event? See, I will go here and I will write one event. The event name I will give as, so event means it is like a method. It is written like a method. So public send to parent, custom event. Just for your understanding sake, I am right. Send to parent custom event. This is custom event. So it is a method. And very important is, it must be an event. That means now if you write like a method, it will be an ordinary method. But I want it like a event. If you want like a event, it should implement an event emitter. It should implement an event emitter, generic type. We learn generics. So here we have to use event emitter. So event emitter. So this custom event is of type event emitter. Now it should allocate memory. That means is equal to new. So what is it? The data type, the configuration of the data type. That means what we have to define. So new event emitter, it should be of new event emitter. Actually it should send any type of value. Event emitter means type. How do we define the type? That means it is of type. What is the type? Event emitter type. So is equal to, how to send generic, I will tell you, is equal to new event emitter. Now you have to tell what type of value this event emitter should send. That means it should send any type of value. So that means you can configure this to send any type of value. Send any type of value. Now you can send any type of value means any type. It can be string, it can be object, it can be array. Okay, you want only string value to send, then you can make it as what type? You can make it as string type. That means it can send only a string, only a string. So this is a custom event. How you say that it is an event? Any property which is marked with event emitter, means of type event emitter, is a custom event. Anything, because all events in Angular are derived from a base class event emitter. All events in Angular are derived from event emitter. So if you implement event emitter, that means it is of type event. So this send to parent custom event, it's an event. Now the memory is allocated for it so that it can send some value. But remember, this is an event created inside this child component. You cannot access in parent component. How events are used? By using event binding technique. That means you have to use a parenthesis. In the parenthesis, what is the event name? Event name is send to parent, but it's not working. It's not working. So that means what is the event name? Observe, the event name is send to parent custom event. Send to parent custom event. This is the event. This event is not working. This event is not working currently. So why it is not working currently? Because already we know that anything you defined. So here it's not working. It's not working here because the concept we already know that anything you defined inside this component is only for this component. If it want to be accessed outside, then you have to mark with here. This time, is it a property to send value or collect value? Collect value or send value? Send value. Then it should be marked with output. It should be marked with output. So to collect value, that is input. To send value, output. So now what should happen is, when user clicks send to parent, click button, this will fire up when user clicks the button. When user clicks the button, this event should carry this value and emit outside. Understood? That means now on button click, what should happen? This dot send to parent custom event should emit which value to emit? String value, na? That means this dot message to parent, it should emit that value. Now remember how this value will be emitted. This value is emitted as an event argument. Events emits value as event arguments. Event related any value is accessible by using event argument. Event related any value is accessible by event argument. That means this value will be emitted. This value will be emitted Now we go to parent component. Here we have to collect the value, because if an event is sending some message, how to collect value in parent component? There must be some method. Na? I will give a method called get value. It is expecting some event argument, right? It is expecting some event argument. So this parent component have to use that get value into this method. This event should send that value. How it sends? Event arguments are sent by using dollar event. That means this dollar event contains that string message sent by this, because this is our custom event. It is having only one property, that is message. So that message is sent. That message is sent here. So now here the point is, when we are sending value into this, now we need to collect the value, right? Now in parent component, we are collecting the value and we need to store that value locally here. Then what we will do here, we will create a property. What is it? Message from child. Child. This is what type message? String. It is empty currently. And what we have to do is, we have to update that message. This message we need to update. So this dot message from child should be updated with E. E contains directly message. That is event argument. Directly it contains the message and we define that. It contains the message, then we are configuring it. Now you see here, when you configure that here, the child now in parent you have to show na, in parent component where to display, this is the property message from child. So in parent component I will display beside this button. Okay, beside this button I will put a message. So what is it? Message from spelling, message from child. Yeah, message from child. That is the option we are displaying. That means now you see here, when I click this send to parent, then it should emit value there. That should emit value there. That means it is sending a value from the child component to the parent. This is a little bit complex. 100% I know that you haven't understood. I will explain 2 more times with different examples, then you will understand, right? Because it's little bit complex. I will explain one more time. I will explain one more time with different examples. 2-3 times I will show you this with different examples. You can understand. So little confusion initially, because at the beginner level, otherwise it's normal. Because people who are good in understanding events, event handlers, event arguments, it's a simple point. But if you are new dealing with this, then it little confusion. No problem. I will explain one more time here. Now, can we send object? You can send anything. You can send any kind of data. Any kind of data. That means here, to send value from parent to child, it's a simple approach. Just you need one property, pass value into it. But sending child to parent requires so many things. What are the concepts required? How to send, how data sent from child to parent? So we have 2 points here. By using custom event, and by using output, right? By using output directive and custom event. So by using these two, we have to send data from the child to parent. What are the steps involved in this? Step one, first step, child component, child component, child component must, child component must provide, must provide, must provide a custom event, a custom event, custom event. Child component must provide a custom event. So events are configured, events are configured by using, events are configured by using event emitter, event emitter. Next point, custom event, custom event can emit value only when marked as output. That's marked with output, right? That is one option. Another point is emitting value is done, emitting value is done by using, emitting value is done by using a local event. Local event means on click, on change, some local event, because we have to tell when to send that value. That means there should be an local event. So emitting value is done by local event with the help of custom event. Local event uses a custom event, through that it will emit the value. That is the point actually. So here we define like this. Syntax, just syntax I will give here. So syntax example I will post, complete example I will post. So we have output, so public, and we have a custom event. It is of type event emitter, event emitter, which can send any type of data. New event emitter, event emitter which can send any type of data. Now what we have to do is we have to configure a local event. This local event is responsible for emitting this value, right? That means what we have to do, so it should emit the value. That means this dot custom event dot emit, emit. So here we have to define the value to emit. You have to give the value to emit, whatever value you want to emit. This is first stage. This allows you to send value from child to parent. For that there must be a custom event, and there must be a local event. Local event sends value to outside by using a custom event. Now step 2, step 2, parent component, parent component can use custom event, custom event of child component, child component, using event binding technique, event binding technique, using event binding technique. And parent component, parent component can access the child value, the child value as event argument. Am I right? As event argument. Parent component can access the child value as event argument, event argument. That means what we have here, we have a child component. Child component have a custom event. Custom event will have a method. Into the method it will pass event $event. Now in the parent component you will have a method. This method will accept that event argument and it will use that here, right? That means e contains message from child. That contains the message from child. We have to access and use it. This is how the data is sent from parent to child. Transporting data from one component to another. So parent to child, child to parent. There are so many techniques here, right? We will see one by one, all of them, how to handle them. But this is the basic, right? Now we will see one more time. Now this time I will show you this concept, how to handle with the help of one real world example. We will take one real world example. Through that, we will try to implement this functionality, implement that functionality that we will see in our next session. Tomorrow we will do. Okay. In tomorrow's session, one more time I will explain this. One more time I will explain with one more example. And two examples I will give you with same concept so that you will get clear picture. And this is only beginning. You have a lot of hierarchies. You will learn so many things. For that, you need to learn a concept of component life cycle. Once you know the life cycle, then you will learn so many other techniques of handling the data, state management and how they work and all, right? So no hurry. One by one, we will explore all the concepts, right? Tomorrow, I will explain this one more time with one good real world example. Then you will have a clarity. Okay. Tomorrow we'll see.